Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. And as you've been listening, we've been talking to business leaders across Asia. So, if I recall correctly, we are now close to 70 episodes. This is probably the 60 something episode that will come out. So, in our previous episodes, we had someone from the Malaysia Book of Records join here, and he was a true connection and he referred or introduced today's guest for us. And today, is actually from the healthcare solutions industry. We have William Wong with us, who is the CEO of Medicos. So a bit of Medicos before we start. So Medicos is a Malaysian company that manufactures disposable face masks. All right, it's based in Klang, and William actually today is calling in from Subang. It has been in operation for over 30 years and is trusted by healthcare professionals for its commitment to quality, reliability, and continuous innovation. And today we'll talk a little bit about innovation as well. So Medicos currently exports to every continent across the world except for Antarctica, which I read on the website. It's something that they are working on as well. So in addition to disposable masks, Medicos also manufactures a range of healthcare and also infection control solutions, as well as surgical gowns, gloves, and caps. So in 2023, Medicos is still a leading manufacturer of disposable face masks and other healthcare and infection control solutions. So William, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And my first question, so we talked about this and William actually watched a few episodes before coming on. And the first question I ask all my guests is, what is your favorite Kung Fu movie?
Okay, so I guess it's, I don't know if it's a movie. It's been made into many movies and TV series. So it's the Legend of the Condor Heroes, which is actually a wuxia novel made into movies. So by the famous Chinese writer Jin Yong. So my favorite is actually I believe is the third and the last of the series, which is the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber. Are you familiar with that, Bob?
I have watched Legend
Yeah.
of the Condor Heroes as a series. The
Yeah.
one that I remember was the one with Richie Ren, but I'm not sure which one are you referring to. That and it's like a series of books, and I think you're referring to the last book.
Yeah.
But do you?
Trilogy, and it's the last one. And it's the one where there is two like powerful weapon that people are after, and then there is the main character is Jiang Wuji, or in Cantonese I think it's Zhong Mo Gei. And so I like the story because he basically started at the beginning of the story pretty much a nobody, but he had all this. He would meet different people and different mentors through his journey, and they would like transfer their kung fu power to him. So it was really like from being a nobody, and then he became like a hero. He also united people together because in the story, like people were of different tribes, and like there were misunderstandings between different groups of people, and somehow he made his way like into all the different groups, even though they were all like enemies of each other. But he brought the people together. He actually like sort of the story was about him uniting people, and the least the you would not imagine that this young man, this young boy at the start would actually be like the great hero that would unite all the forces of the kung fu different kung fu forces. Yeah, so I just love the story.
That's thanks for sharing that. I remember watching the series, and like you said, it's a transfer of power from the mentors. So one of the when I remember watching the Richie Ren version, they always sit in a cave. There's a lot of practicing and kung fu practicing in the cave, and a lot of transfer of kung fu by meditating together, sort of meditating together, and then they transfer the kung fu over, like sort of like downloading the kung fu to the
Yes,
disciple.
it's right. Downloading. Yeah, like a metamorphosis, Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very very interesting. And yeah, do
How
you?
nice if that was possible, like you can transfer your knowledge and experience, right, through metamorphosis. That would save
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. It is ahead of its time. So Jin Yong is also in the wrote that book quite some time ago, but it is still very relevant today. And yeah, thanks for sharing that story of him uniting the tribes, etc.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
do you also happen to know the series or movie that you watched? Who was the main actor, or do you have any recollection of that?
Oh, you not really, because I'm not Chinese educated. I don't actually remember their names as well. And yeah, maybe when I see the face, then yeah, then I would. I remember one of it was so I watched many versions of it, and to be honest, it's all nice. I cannot pick one over the other, but there was one version I believe is Tony Leung,
Ah,
Leung Chiu Wai, when he was really much younger. Yeah, that version is very nice. And this was
oh,
before all the, all the CGI, and all the special effects. So it was wuxia in the early days, not like today. Wuxia is so convincing today, so realistic. Yeah.
Tony Leung's version would have been in either the early 90s, I believe something, or
Yeah.
much earlier.
I,
But
yeah.
like you said before CGI,
Yes.
and to the audience, Jin Yong is like our sort of like our Tolkien, or in the Chinese
Oh,
novel series,
wow.
something like George Martin. He's
Wow.
a lot of not only Legend of the Condors, but many of his novels
Yeah.
became very good movies or
Yeah.
very good series as well. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, William, for sharing that.
Yeah. Most welcome.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I like the question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It took some time for me to yeah, I've asked many of my guests that question. I believe you're the second person who referenced Jin Yong. You're
Wow.
only the second person. I had almost like 70 guests now.
Okay.
And yeah, so let's talk about Medicos now. Medicos has been around for 30 years.
Mhm.
So yes, of course, evolved across the 30 years. So maybe can you tell us more about what it is today and how has it evolved in the past 30 years?
I would say they are, I guess, two phases or two part of the evolution, a very distinct evolution. I think the first part of it was before the pandemic, before COVID, and I think COVID itself is another phase. So maybe I'll start with the pre-pandemic evolution, and that actually is the bulk of it. If you look at time, because we started in 1991 and up to 2019. So we were a pioneer manufacturer of face masks in Malaysia. So my father actually started the business together with my mom. It's a Yeah, my mom and dad actually were the pioneers. And so we started out of a shop lot. It wasn't even a proper factory back then. And we it was started with a very low budget, because we didn't come from money, and the business was actually funded by relatives and friends who gave a friendly loan to my parents to start the business. And so it was the first 10 years, I guess, is uh, uh, the hard work years. So I remember my father, and I was in school, so I was in my secondary school when my dad started the business. I remember my dad would carry in his, in those days he had a James Bond bag. We call it a James Bond bag. It's like a briefcase, and then you have like the passcode on the left and right one. So a 3-digit passcode on left and right, and then you pop and then you open the bag. So that was the James Bond bag was what he carried. And in his bag, right, I remember that he would carry in it will be his pajamas. So that's my dad. He's ready to sleep in the to if he was too tired, he wouldn't drive back. He would actually rest at the factory, because we lived in PJ and the factory was in Klang. Yeah, so the travel distance in those days before NKV and Kesas, we only had the
Federal.
Yeah, only the federal, and if it's bad traffic means it can take hours, and so yeah, my dad would pack his pajamas there. So the first 10 years is my parents. I came in to help when I graduate, and it was my first job. In hindsight, I don't advise to do that, but during the time, I think my father and my mom, the business was they were aging. You can see that they needed help. So I being the eldest in the family, I decided to just join the family business because I knew uh, so little then as a fresh grad. And so I would say the first 10 years was more like my parents laying the foundation. And I guess you would say the second 10 years from the 2000 to 2010 onwards was really the first like growth. Those were the growth years, I would say. One of the trigger of the growth year was actually SARS. So face mask is the bulk of our production. Like 80% of our revenue comes from masks, pre-pandemic. And SARS was actually the first sort of it triggered the first leap for the company. Yeah. So almost like face mask business has been like we are like firefighters, you can say. So when there's a fire, we put out the fire. But every time there's a fire, that's actually our spike in the growth and the revenue. That's our opportunity moment, you could say. That's the moment that we shine, because that's when the world needs this product. Otherwise, it's pretty much an obscure product. Nobody really thinks about it, right? No, we don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, let's go buy face masks. Mainly only used in the hospitals and in some factories. Yeah, only used by the public when there is an endemic or when there's a pandemic. Yeah, so SARS was the first, I guess, that put us on like the first stage we got on. And then there was H1N1. About, I believe, 6 years after SARS, there was H1N1. Uh, and But nothing as big. Both of these were not as big as COVID by far. COVID was the impact was far greater. But those two trigger event in the second decade of the organization, that was the growth era, I guess, for us. And I would say from 2010, 2011 up to 2019, that was, I think, when we, because of the growth in the second decade, then we became, I guess, uh, we moved to our premise. So that's the milestone, is moving to our current premise, which is about 60,000 square feet. So that's we became a real proper manufacturing facility. And yeah, all this while, because face mask factories outside China is rare. I estimate that there are probably only 10% of the world's total production of face masks. It's out of China. Yeah, so China is dominating the global market. I believe close to 90%, if not more than 90%. And so you could say that it's not difficult, you could say, to be the largest factory in Malaysia in that sense. But if you compare with factories in China, then the factories there will be larger by far. Yeah, but we were the largest factory in Malaysia, I think, all this while since we started. And yeah, that was pandemic. That years of just like our growth rate was just 3 to 5% annually. Yeah, and pandemic, that was the big evolution, I think, came in the pandemic. Although it's 3 years in our history, or 2.5 years in our history, but I would say it probably, the growth rate that we experienced in that 2.5 years, I think is far greater than the first almost 3 decades combined, even in terms of revenue as well. Yeah, so because what happened to us was from an OEM factory, we produce for other brands, we produce for European brands, American brands. Before pandemic, more than half our production was to Germany alone. Yeah, Germany as a country bought up like more than 50% of our capacity. And locally, it's less than 10%. The amount of, is a low single digit, the amount of revenue that comes from face masks in Malaysia. Then when the pandemic hit, the reverse happened. More than 90% of our revenue came from local, because we became a brand. And also because there was an export ban, right? There was a control of face masks leaving the country when pandemic came. And on top of that, every country in the world had their manufacturer. So just to give you a number, like Malaysia had maybe 6 factories before the pandemic, 6 face mask factory. And in, let's say, Germany, there was 0, not a single face mask factory in Germany. And the pandemic brought the peak. Malaysia went from 6 factory to the peak of about close to 40 factories, large and small, right? But about close to 40 different entities producing face masks. But Germany went from 0 to about 60, over 60, and I'm told. Yeah, so you can see, and this is the case in almost every country, because it was a national security matter. You needed face masks everywhere, right? Pre-pandemic, you only needed, the world only had about 60 million piece per day capacity. The entire world, 60 million piece per day. Now we have 7.8 billion population. So not everyone was wanting face masks. I would estimate that we probably use about 3 billion piece per day at our peak. But from 60 to 3 billion is still a 50 times growth. So one factory had to become 50 factory. Yeah, that was the scale of things, that COVID. So that's why I say by far, nothing compared to SARS and H1N1, because it's 50 times bigger. Yeah, and so every country had to produce. It was national security matter for every country. They have to go into their own production. And so we lost our export business, you could say. Yeah, our government also banned the export of masks for the national security matter. And in Germany, in US, and Europe, and everybody had their own production. So we were forced, or you have no other choice. You have to build your local market. And then our brand. So that's a long story as well, but our brand sort of is unplanned. It was accidental. And the last 3 years have been about brand, about how we transform from selling face masks in container loads to selling one box on Shopee and Lazada. Like, we had our own customer service, we set up our own online store, and we had zero marketing pre-pandemic. Because we are very operationally and very R&D focused, you could say, very operational, right? And we don't need so much marketing, because in the OEM business, I can probably close 1 or 2 clients a year, and that's enough, because the volume that the client could give us, 1 or 2 brands could give us, is basically the growth of the industry. We were on par with the industry growth, all right, by just signing up 1 to 2 clients per year. So I'm sales and I'm marketing as well. CEO is sales and marketing. And so we went from 0 marketing staff to I think we have now maybe 11 in marketing. So yeah, massive transformation from OEM, private label producer, to brand owner, distributor, yeah, to setting up Shopify stores and learning about performance marketing, learning about social media. Oh, we had our first Facebook, Instagram page. We haven't got to TikTok. Yeah, but that's our evolution from a manufacturer to I guess a consumer goods product, a fast moving consumer goods. Yeah, so we also brought in talents from the FMCG industry to help us, because face mask became a FMCG product.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. It's it's 30 years. It's not easy to condense
Yeah.
into this podcast. But thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I remembered when I spoke to John. I said, hey, who would you recommend to be on the podcast? And he said, you must talk to William Wong about the transformation in the pandemic. And good to hear that now you have your own Shopify and marketing team, etc. What was the main cause for that? Was it like a lot of demand for your products after the pandemic?
With the pandemic, I guess
Mm.
during the pandemic, yes, the demand is like when at the onset of it, it happened to us in, I remember, Chinese New Year of year 2020, reunion dinner. You know, you don't disturb the Chinaman on reunion dinner, right? But my phone ring continuously that night, and everyone is asking for face masks. And I believe it was a Friday night. But I remember on Sunday, I went back to the factory and we started production on Sunday. We called everyone back. We said it looks very, very severe. Like the whole world is calling you. So Sunday we came back, we we prepped the factory, and then we started to ramp up our production on Sunday. Monday morning was a long queue outside the factory, right? So people would just queue up even before we would arrive, and they were already queuing, and everyone's asking for face masks. So yeah, the demand is, we were getting at the peak 7 to 8,000 emails per week, and our phone lines, you cannot it will ring continuously, and we cannot even work. Like we literally we unplugged the line so nobody could call us, because we cannot work with the phone calls that we were getting. It was impossible to work. So if you look at our Google reviews, we have very low rating. But if you scan through the comments, it's because everyone was complaining that no one pick up the phone and no one reply email. Impossible to reply 7 to 8,000 emails a week at the start of the pandemic. So yeah, the demand is out of this world at that time lah. Yeah, because I guess the what really happened is because China banned their export of masks, because 90% of the world's production was in China. So the moment they banned the export, all the factories out of China, right, became the they are thrown into the limelight. No? So people didn't even come to us. Like there were some people not come to us to buy masks. They said, William, can you sell me your factory? Yeah, literally, we were getting offers to buy over the factory at that time. Yeah. And we had people like fly from Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea before the borders control. They fly in the country to buy masks to ship it back to their country. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very very different, very extraordinary times indeed, and
Yeah.
I can see
Yeah.
the surge of demand. You said like the phone is non-stop calling,
Mm.
and then of course there's now a lot at that time a lot more factories rose up. So maybe my question will be a bit different. So at that time, because of the unique situation, like we never faced this before, is there something that you have done differently during the pandemic?
Wow. I I always thought the pandemic would end in 6 months.
Mm.
Yeah, I never thought it would last. I counted, I think it lasts about 27 months. Yeah, from at any point in time, I think if you ask me when will the pandemic end, my answer I think would be six
So
months.
optimistic.
Yeah. At any point, if you ask me, it was 6 months. So if you ask me in January, I would say 6 months the most. You ask me in October, I'll say 6 months. Yeah, and you ask me in 2021, I'll say 6 months. So I think in hindsight, that's maybe what I would have changed because of my experience with SARS and H1N1, which ended abruptly. And every time when something like this ends abruptly, we ramp up our production and it ends abruptly. Uh, the shock and the impact affects us. And so because of those previous experience, I think it was a limitation. I did not, or we were not optimistic about investing in growing the business. We could have grown. Now we did push our production. We managed to double our production, uh, our daily capacity from 500,000 pieces per day to 1 million pieces per day. And but it was not enough because Malaysia was probably using about 15 million pieces at its peak, and at least 10 million, 8 to 10 million almost consistently during the later part of the 27 months. So we being the pioneers, we could have captured a larger market share. We could have if we had been more aggressive with our expansion. But yeah, we did not take that position. We also felt that it was a challenge. Like when we have to push up production, you have to sacrifice quality because we don't have people, we don't have raw material, and when you buy machine on such a short uh, notice, you will not be able to properly get the machines that you want. Also, the manufacturers at the time, like they didn't want to do because we always had our own design for the machine because we make, I think, a special, we make things differently. Our masks are built differently, and because of that it requires customization with the machines. We can't buy off the shelf. And at that time, a lot of the mass machine makers, they were not interested to do customization because it was faster, to easier to make money. And so those that also deterred us. Like we felt that we were investing into machines that we can only use during the pandemic because it was not the kind of machine that we would have used for long term, that we would invest for long term. And so all this deterred us. Raw material, like people, the labor skill, and engineers and machines. So the availability of the machines that we want. So this deterred us. So we felt that wow, if we push double, it was a lot already for us. Like to go for triple, quadruple the size, the capacity, it would be a lot of it would definitely involve sacrifice in the quality. And so we opt not to do it. But in hindsight,
Yeah.
maybe create another brand because we loved Medicos, and the brand stood for something, and it stood for quality, it stood for variability, it stood for comfort, it stood for breathability. So we make the most breathable face mask in the market. So you can wear our face mask for longer period of time, and still be comfortable and breathable with no compromise on the protection. That was our specialty. We have the know-how in the technology to produce breathable and safe masks. And yeah, we didn't want to, I guess, uh, we wanted to keep the brand as a leader in quality. And yeah, but if we were after maybe the profit, then if we were delivering purely for shareholders' happiness, then we should have probably start another brand and bring in import masks, like most of our competitors, the brands that emerged during the pandemic. Quite a fair bit of them were importing their masks. They did not get into production, so they just import and they focus on branding and distribution. Yeah, maybe that would have been something that we could have done. It was purely profit, but somehow that's not us. I think we enjoy what we do, and because we just always thought, COVID's gonna end. Let's not invest too much into all this, and then we tire ourselves. And if we knew that COVID would last 27 months, then we would have planned 27 months, because we didn't know it would be 27 months. We always thought it would be 6, then we didn't invest. Yeah.
Yeah, like people say hindsight is 2020. Right.
It's like,
Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah, I think maybe my next question would be how is it now? So it was after the 27 months, it's now post-COVID, and now there's a lax. Last time we used to be, if you want to enter any premise, you need a face mask, right? It was mandatory.
yeah,
But now after COVID, how is it like?
yeah. So volume is down. Production is have a lot of capacity that's unutilized. Export recovery is very slow as well because there are face mask factories in every country of the world right now. And yeah, so it's a slow in terms of the production, but we're fortunate because we still have the brand, and because we transform ourselves from being a manufacturer. Okay. So with the slowdown in business, I think we were fortunate because we moved up the sort of value chain, you could say, from just being a manufacturer. We now became a distributor and we became a brand owner. So with that, we increase our margins. So yes, volume is down. Production is very free now with extra capacity, but we we are still able to actually make better bottom line profit compared to 2019. So yeah, volume is actually less than half of 2019, to be honest. But yet the margins are better because of the higher value activity as a distributor and brand owner. So we're still slightly better than 2019 in terms of profit. And that's very good, I guess, for 2023. I can't say the same for 24. So 24 is going to be a challenge for us. It's our crisis, but we are pivoting. We are pivoting. So maybe I share a little bit about the pivot because that's also something interesting. Because to us there's two pivot. We have to pivot and transform ourselves to cater to the needs of the pandemic, and now we are pivoting again because we are moving out of pandemic, right? So the second pivot that we are attempting, of course, on one end, we are waiting for export to recover, to go back to what we were doing in 2019. On the other end, we are also exploring what we can do with the new distribution channel that we have developed. Because we have pharmacies. We have over 1,500 pharmacies, retail outlet carrying Medicos masks. We've built relationships with these retailers. Now, can we develop possibly new brands, new products, completely unrelated to Medicos, and then distribute into these retail chains? Because we also have the marketing expertise already. We have people who have experience building FMCG brands. Shall we then move the talents and to be able to use these distribution channel, right, to that we have established to then build new businesses. And that's what we are attempting to do at this moment. So we are moving into personal care. We are considering to go into perhaps nutrition supplement. These are the products that do well in a pharmacy chain.
Thank you for sharing that. It's good to hear that that this is something I think that is exciting as well, because you already have all these distribution channels, like you say, all the pharmacies carrying it. And how about internationally? Are you excited about things internationally as well?
Yeah, export customers are calling us. We are having meetings with them, and everyone is talking about recovery. But I would say recovery is really very slow. For this year, at least in 2023, we have not seen any significant recovery. But orders are coming back, but very slowly. So we are doing maybe 10% of what we used to do in terms of export. Yeah, maybe 10 to 15% of what we used to do in terms of export. So I think to me, what is first sign of recovery, I think, is when we at least hit that 50% mark of what we used to export. And I reckon it will still take at least another year or more from the way that things are going. So the exciting part, I guess, is showcasing what we have done. So during the COVID, we have the massive growth in innovation is amazing, because what happened was you know, at the onset of the pandemic, the automotive industry have to shut down because everything shut down in a sense. So the automotive engineers actually were assigned to develop face mask machine. That's what happened in China. So China is also the source of face mask machines. So Chinese government directed engineers, their best minds, to develop face mask machines at the onset of pandemic, because they had to ramp up their production 50 times, as I said, right? 50 times the capacity. So the best engineers in automotive industry were developing faster machines. And that also brought the cost of machines down, by the way. Cost of machine is at the lowest in history. And the speed of this machine is twice the speed of what it was pre-pandemic. So not only just machine, we also have new materials. We have new capability to do new materials, softer, comforted. And so this gave birth to new innovations in terms of the finished good. And we're just excited now to show the finished goods to the international buyers. But business is still slow. We're just showcasing now. Hopefully, they will pick up on these new innovations, and because the market needs to digest the amount of stock in the market. So they're just digesting their stock, running the stock down at the warehouse, and then the recovery, I believe, will come in, but at least another year.
Thank you, William. I wish you and your team all the best with that. I wish that next year, nobody knows what's going to happen, but recovery will come as well. And thanks for sharing on the pod. You are the first, I would say, medical solutions. I had medical industry, of course, on the pod, but you're the first medical solutions person. Thank you so much for being and sharing your insights and wisdom here.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you so much, William.
Okay.